Hello and welcome to this new video. This new video, which won't really be a video, but more like a video with visual content, which is a format which I wanted to try and which I think can provide useful. So today I come back for a little series of video in relation to some topics or interrogations that came to me while I was working on the preparation regarding my third book, which I'll start writing when I will be done with the last steps of my second book. Which is now almost finalized since I need, again, one last review before the orthographic correction. As this third book should be more like a fantasy book, the first two books were not. This prompted me to ask myself a lot of new questions, notably on the notion of main character, hero, etc. Hence, these videos. So, the first topic I will address, and which I don't see discussed a lot, is the difference between main character and protagonist, and also where the notion of hero fits into that. I will also discuss at the end about where is the narrator in all that. And because yes, the protagonist and the main character, and also the hero, are not the same thing. Even though most of the time they are used as synonymous, because generally only one character in the story is all three. But when you start to think about the structure of the story, you will see that it's not as simple as that, and those concepts are not to be mistaken for one another. So, the main difference is to be made between the protagonist and the main character. And I think the best way to start is to define both. So first, the protagonist. So the protagonist, it's the character who will conduct the plot, who will pursue the goal or the purpose of the story. He generally is the one who will grow or evolve during the course of the plot, whether he succeeds or not in the pursuit of the goal. There are many examples, for sure, such as, for example, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, Harry Potter in the books of the same name, etc. So there are three types of protagonists. The first one is the most obvious, it's the hero. That's where the notion of hero fits. So the hero is one type of protagonist. So the hero is relatable, is the good guy. I won't go into a lot of details about the hero itself in this video because it was not the purpose of this video. But to summarize, if you take the definition from Aristotle, which is the beginning of the notion of hero, so the hero is a paragon of virtue. The second type of protagonist is the anti-hero. This one, he doesn't look like a hero and doesn't appear at first to have the look or the behavior of the hero. But ultimately, what's important is that he will act in heroic manner when needed. And of course, the last type of protagonist, it's the opposite of the hero, is the villain. If we describe the hero as a paragon of virtue, then the villain is the paragon of vice. So that's it for the protagonist, and on the other hand, you have the main character. So the definition of main character, it's far more simple. So basically the main character, it's the central character. It's the one we will follow and who will serve as a substitute for the reader or the spectator. So basically it's a point of view. So if we want to summarize, we could say that the protagonist is the objective drive of the plot, and the main character is the subjective drive of the plot. However, it's true that most of the time, both will be impersonated by the same character in the story. But there are some good examples to show you cases where both are not the same, so you could clearly understand the difference between the two. So one good example that I like, and that is the most obvious one, it's in The Great Gatsby. So in this book, the protagonist, it's obviously Gatsby, since his name is in the title and it's for him that we bought the book. But the main character, the character from whose point of view the story is told, it's not Gatsby. It's Nick Carraway, it is his neighbor who becomes his friend, because the story is told from his point of view. So that's a good example where the two are different. Another very famous example, it's Sherlock Holmes. Everyone knows Sherlock Holmes. And these stories, of course, the one leading the plot, it's Sherlock Holmes, because he's a detective, and he's therefore the protagonist. But the one telling the story, it's in fact Watson, who therefore is the main character. My favorite example, which won't surprise those who watch this channel, since they know my love for Chuck Palahniuk, it's in Fight Club. So I will spoil the story here, so you can advance a few seconds if you want to avoid it. But in this book, Palahniuk, he plays with both concepts, the concept of protagonist and main character, because initially the protagonist, it's Tyler Durden. He's played by Brad Pitt in the movie. And the main character telling the story, it's the narrator. He's played by Edward Norton in the movie as well. But at the end, it is revealed that both are one and the same person. Hence, at the end, we go back to have a protagonist and the main character who have merged. And I think it's very nice. It's a very nice play on this concept. So now, how to be able to distinguish the two when they are separate? Or if you want to see if they are separate. So first, it's easy. You need to find what is the goal of the story. Then, when you have the goal, the one who's pursuing this goal will be the protagonist. And the one trying to prevent this goal is the antagonist. And then finally, the one whose point of view the story is told and which make us feel this goal will be the main character. Generally, it's the same as the protagonist, but not always, as we saw. Now, the most important part of this distinction. So, why is it useful to know the difference and to sometimes separate them? One of the reasons to separate them may be in the case where you have an unrelatable protagonist. If the audience can't relate to the protagonist, then it may be good to separate it from the main character with a relatable main character to tell the story. Such it is the case in, for example, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, for example, because Willy Wonka is not a very relatable as a protagonist. So the story is told through Charlie, who is a kid and so who's more relatable for the audience. Another reason would be if you want to create mystery or distance with the protagonist, since having a separate main character will allow you to hide things concerning the protagonist, such as it's the case in Gatsby, for example. Also, it can be used just to have a different point of view on the topic pursued by the story or by the protagonist. For example, in To Kill a Mockingbird, it's the case because we see the racism issues through the protagonist, who is an adult, so it's a lawyer, Atticus. But then we also view it through the point of view of an innocent child, which is his daughter, and who is the main character of the story, because we see the story through her eyes. So finally, where is the narrator in all that? Well, first, you don't need a narrator all the time. Most of the stories don't have one. If there is one narrator, also, he can be completely out of the story and exterior to it. In that case, it's not really relevant where it fits. And finally, if the narrator is a character in the story, then most of the time, he will be the main character. Because since he will be telling the story, he will be the one witnessing it, so it's his point of view, hence he will be the main character. So he could also be the protagonist, of course. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video, I will talk about the question that led me to this first video. And this question was to know if we can avoid to have the protagonist to be a chosen one or not. And see you next time!